All right, so we're joined from Houston, Texas by my friend Eryka T. Johnson with ExxonMobil. We are recording this for all of our computer science engineering students in Madison County schools, including my good friends Jatoria Kersey and Angela Reed over at Old Town Middle School. And I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the invitation, Greg.
Well, and we're glad to have you. Now, before we get into what all, because you've been with ExxonMobil for years, now one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
You are an HBCU grad, Prairie View A&M down there in South Texas.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll let you make it in Jackson State, Alcorn territory today. But tell us about your HBCU and college experience and how that led you to a career in engineering.
Yeah, actually, I was actually pretty excited when I asked you to explain a little bit about, like, tell me a little bit about your school. And you said one thing that just really lit up for me. And you said, we're in rural Mississippi. And so when I really think back, and even before getting to my college career, I grew up in a very rural town, less than 5,000 people in Louisiana, in central Louisiana, a place called Bunkie, Bunkie. And, one of the things about Bunkie is the economy there is really focused around agriculture. So there was very little exposure to the STEM industry or STEM fields, or what those careers could actually look like. And in fact, pretty much all of our mentors were basically our teachers. So we didn't see a lot of people. I didn't see an engineer uh, prior to going to university. But I can recall there was one TV show that I would watch religiously on Thursday. So I'm gonna date myself a little bit, called A Different World. And what I loved about that show was that I got to see, children or kids that looked like me. And so you had someone that was aspiring to be a doctor and a community activist to fight for the causes that were really important to them. There was an engineer. And at the time, I wasn't really focused on the engineer because he wasn't really the cute guy on the show. But ultimately, eventually it led me to a career in engineering. Truthfully, though, up until that time, and actually to like my senior year in high school, I wanted to be an attorney. And so that was where all of my focus was. I had applied to go on to Southern University ultimately to study law there. And it wasn't until my senior year in high school where I'm meeting with my guidance counselor, and we would have like these, I don't know if it was called like exit interviews, but it's almost like, okay, we're going to talk about what are your plans after high school? What are you going to do? And so I explained to my guidance counselor that I wanted to be an attorney. And it was because of what I saw on television. That was the only exposure that I had. And then she began to tell me about her sister. And she said, my sister is a mechanical engineer. She's
Wow.
working in the automotive industry. At the time, I think she may have been in Tennessee. And she was just telling me about like all of the change that she was affecting in the industry as a female engineer. And I said, she said, listen, I really want you to reconsider. She said, your grades are really high in math and science. This may be something that you're interested in. And so actually that's where things pivoted for me, is after having that conversation. And again, I was scheduled to go to Southern University. I had some issues that happened in the back office, the financial aid office. And so I quickly pivoted to Prairie View A&M University. I was able to go on a full scholarship. I had all of my out-of-state fees waived, everything paid for, my housing, my books, the tuition. And ultimately, because I came from a single parent home, there wasn't a whole lot of financial support, but I used my gift of writing, which I love to write, to apply for scholarships. Like I was probably one of those people that was in the scholarship office every single day when there were scholarships coming in, because most students weren't applying for scholarships, but I knew that was one of the ways that was going to help me stay afloat. And so it was nothing for me to write a 2-page essay and get a $10,000 scholarship and be able to live off of that for the semester. So I studied at Prairie View. I When I graduated high school, I graduated as valedictorian. That's the top of my class. Got to Prairie View. I did very well academically at Prairie View, and so was named the top student for mechanical engineering for at least 3 or 4 of the years that I was there. I graduated again at the top of the class, and I led out our graduating class, the whole College of Engineering. I led that class for our commencement services. And so I had a great opportunity, great time while I was there matriculating at Prairie View.
Yeah, and you're actually the third Prairie View alum we've had on this channel, and you're
Oh,
actually this will blow your mind. You're the second person from Bunkie.
are you serious?
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. But
Okay.
you definitely are the second person from Bunkie. Um,
Okay.
but you did mention about the scholarships. Now, just a brief aside here. I have a lot of kids tell me, and this is especially in rural Mississippi, they say, I want to go to college. I don't know if my family can afford it. That's a very real concern,
Yes,
and
it
that's
is.
okay.
Yeah.
But like you said, you were the one applying for the scholarships, whether you go to school for engineering or not. The amount
Mhm.
of scholarship money that goes unclaimed every year is literally in the hundreds of thousands.
I
So
believe
all
it.
it takes is maybe doing a little research, maybe having to write a couple pages. These people are dying to give this money away, and they're really looking for people from marginalized groups. They're looking for minorities. They're looking for immigrants. They're looking for women. So there are all these different opportunities that did not exist before that are here now for kids that really have their mindset on going to college, and cost may be an obstacle for them.
But think about it, that was over 20 years ago. So there's probably more opportunity now. And when I would go into the scholarship office, literally they were telling me there's no students that's coming in. So as soon as I would apply, I write up the application, I was immediately getting the monies, because if they didn't distribute those funds, they had to send it back to those companies that were so,
Yeah.
and foundations that were so generously giving to students. So absolutely. So don't allow that to be a barrier. It's ultimately why I shared that. That should never be a barrier.
Yeah, and especially now, we really focus on the ACT in our district, and 20 on the ACT can get you baseline and start earning you those academic scholarships on top of qualifying you for grants. So that really is a big deal to take that ACT seriously. So you graduated from Prairie View, and you've been with ExxonMobil pretty much 20 odd years. Which is
Yes, so
obviously we all see the signs. It's one of the largest companies in the world.
yeah.
But you think of ExxonMobil, you think chemical engineers,
Mm.
and you've really never done the chemical side. But mechanical engineering is also a part of the petroleum industry. I know for years you were with static equipment, which is the refineries, the mixing, the transport
Mhm.
of all these chemicals. So talk about how your career has evolved in Exxon, because you've touched a lot of areas of this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I began with Exxon. So I officially became a full-time employee in 2001. But in the year 2000, I actually did an internship, a summer internship that just kind of introduced me to working in the industry in energy or the oil and gas industry for the first time, because a prior internship was in the automotive industry with General Motors. But I came into Exxon in 2001 as a full-time employee. And since then, like, I've had the opportunity as a mechanical engineer to work in very technical roles, but also in probably more so technical leadership roles. And so I came into the organization as a project execution, project management type of engineer, where I was responsible for new modifications that were actually happening in the refinery. So I'm meaning perhaps we were building like a new pressure vessel where we could, put the contents, whatever those chemicals or those contents are, to be, to transport it from one piece of equipment to the next. There was, and at any point in time that I would be responsible for budgets millions of dollars up to maybe 10, $20 million. And I was responsible for ensuring that those projects were delivered on time, they were delivered within budget, and they met the specifications that the intent of why they were designed. And as well, it was quality. So, the worst thing that you can do is spend quite a bit of time and money, because some of these projects would take 2 years, sometimes even longer than that. The worst thing that could happen is you have all of the crews come in that you're organizing and folks are building things and they're connecting things, and you go to start up, you go to hit the start button, and it doesn't work, right? Or you actually have leaking pipes, or you have a vessel that's leaking, or nozzles that's leaking. And so quality is a really big part of that. I went on from doing project engineering, project management, and going into a technical mechanical engineering role where I supported a particular process unit. So when you think about a refinery, it's broken down into different processes, right? You may have a coker unit, or you may have a crude unit where the oil comes in and it starts the whole processing within the refinery. Or you may have a light ends unit, like as you've gone into that vessel and you've heated up that crude, whatever's coming off of the top is gonna, go into light end processing. So I was responsible for an area of the plant. And in this particular role, I worked with an integrated team. So it was a mechanical engineer, it was a chemical engineer. You had even an electrical engineer. So it was all of the meeting of the minds coming together to make sure that this particular operation ran as it was supposed to. And when there were issues that came up, so anything that dealt with a pressure vessel, or dealt with piping, or dealt with the tank, those issues would come to me to say, okay, we need you to fix this, or we need you to replace this, we need you to redesign this. So all of those type of issues I dealt with, but I worked with an integrated team. It wasn't me working by myself. As a team, we made sure that the operations for this particular units were up to par. And then, later I kind of pivoted and I went from mechanical engineering to dealing with mechanical integrity. And that was along the inspection side, where we had quite a bit of, we had with all of the pressure equipment that's out in the field, you're required by regulatory bodies to maintain this stuff, right?
Yep.
You're required to make sure that you have a program that's looking at, if there's some corrosion going on, you need to be monitoring that corrosion and figuring out, okay, how much wall is actually left in this vessel before it leaks, because it has the potential to explode. It has the potential to the liquid to go to the ground and get into the sewer, or even get into some nearby body of water. So like there's things from a regulatory standpoint that you're responsible for. And so I was managing this program that, ensured that we were up to code on all of our inspections across, our pressure vessels and across our pipings, to make sure that, we were meeting those requirements. And we could ultimately find where there were risks in the refinery that we didn't know about, right? Those very risks are those things that cause the explosion. It's those things that, if there's an incident that happens, you could in essence not go home that day, right? There could be a fatality. You went in that morning and your family doesn't see you that night. And so the things that I worked on within mechanical integrity had everything to do with making sure that we maintain the condition of this equipment so that we're not endangering the community. We're not endangering, my peers and employees, the contractors, those that work for us, and that we were taking care of the environment as well. And so I spent quite a bit of time in mechanical integrity. I've been at several locations. I started off in New Orleans, Louisiana, and then moved to like the Houston, Baytown, Texas area before going to Billings, Montana, which was a much different experience than I've ever had before, prior to coming back again to Houston. And so now I'm working as a reliability and a maintenance advisor, specifically in equipment strategy and maintenance planning areas. And so what I'm responsible for, this is a global role. I'm responsible for ensuring our reliability and our maintenance performance, that we're delivering the top, the most competitive performance at the least amount of cost. And so my organization is responsible for all of the end-to-end work processes that allow us to do that. And it allows us to really, we're a pretty large organization, and we have, downstream operations, which are the refineries. We have chemical plants, but we also have upstream operations where your folks are offshore, they're drilling oil. It's bringing together all of those different business lines to say, hey, is there a way that we can really synergize to use the same work processes? So it's the same regardless of, any of the 50 operating facilities that you go to across the country, and we're using the same processes, we're talking the same language, and ultimately we're increasing our reliability and our maintenance across the corporation.
Absolutely. And also what people don't realize is that these petroleum companies, these petroleum careers affect so many people. They affect the economy of our country. They affect the
Mhm.
transportation of goods. They affect the construction of buildings. So it really is an extremely vital career and an extremely vital field. And I think it's cool with this type of engineering is you get to be on the computer designing things and doing research, but you get to be out there with a hard hat, seeing things made, seeing things
Yeah.
done, getting test things. So it really is a good mix of the technical and hands-on side of engineering, which to me would be the more fun stuff.
Yeah, like I love to go, like I call them my learning days, where we may have a vendor that we're using. So in my prior role as a static equipment engineer, I was responsible for designing reactors. And these reactors, they're very, very delicate pieces of equipment. They have internals that are really delicate, made of some of the materials that are a little bit, higher grade type of a materials. And so I got an opportunity, me and some of my colleagues, to go to one of the local vendors that we use for like all of these internals. And we got to see them, actually producing them for us, right? So you had these really big lathe machines, and, they were using cutters and all of the things that, as I was at Prairie View in the lab classes, I got to see all of that stuff in real life. And the thing about it is, it was on a much bigger scale, right? The pieces of equipment that we use in the labs were kind of, miniature compared to what I got to see at the actual vendor shop. And so, those things are really important to stay current with what's going on in industry. To build those relationships with the third parties, with those individuals that are providing you, goods and services. So all of that is really important. And you're constantly keeping that knowledge up for yourself as well.
All right, so you've talked about two things I'm glad you mentioned, and I wanted to talk about this
Okay.
because you talked about relationships and you talked about internships.
Mm,
Because whether somebody goes to college or not, whether they
mhm.
go into engineering or not, if you when you go to college, I say all the time, you can't just worry about a GPA.
Oh
The
yeah.
academics are important, but you've got to get involved in student organizations. If you want to
Yeah.
get into engineering, NESB is a great organization, and we have it at our HBCU and our
Oh,
PWI campuses here in Mississippi. And
okay.
also, I'm an LSU grad, and
Okay.
I'm an LSU grad, and they had a large chapter there as well.
Hmm.
And you talked about internship. You can't just get great grades and then decide, hey, I'm going to go get a job when nobody knows who you are. And then you
Oh,
talked about the relationships because even if you decide not to go to college, because you can get into engineering with associates and some certifications, get your foot in the door,
yeah.
maybe get a degree later, depending on the path you want to take. Also, if you want to go to the military, you can get a lot of engineering certificates and get trained as an engineer. So
Yeah.
there's several options, but at the same time, you've got to learn how to communicate. You've got to learn to work with a team. You can't just be a person that's sitting on the sideline, especially some of our groups that don't have a lot of representation in engineering.
Mm,
Women need to be heard, but they've got to stand up and say, look, I'm here and I can offer something. We need our
yeah.
young Black kids, our immigrants. We need them to stand up and say, look, I can contribute something to this.
Yeah.
You can be the
Yeah.
best student in the world, but if nobody knows it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, one of the things that that I love to do, and I'm gonna hit 2 points here. The first being, so I'm a part of the recruiting team at Prairie View. So ExxonMobil, along with other companies, every year they go to career fairs, and they bring their teams, and it's an opportunity for the students to really demonstrate what they're capable of doing, like what they've learned over time, but also demonstrate the leadership side of it as well, because leadership is one of those skills that is transferable no matter your station in life. Like, at the end of the day, we have to be personal leaders ultimately in order to be leaders to others, for others to follow us and to trust that we're gonna take care of them and do the right things. And so every year the recruiting team goes to Prairie View, and we get an opportunity, prior to the career fairs, we get an opportunity to get with the organizations like, like NSME, for instance. And this last time around, we did a presentation for for NSBE. And of course, they invited, if anybody was in the College of Engineering and wanted to come, they were available, it was open for them to come. But we really talked about, how do you make sure that you're acing these technical, interviews, even if you hadn't had that internship, that technical internship. Like perhaps you were working at, I don't know, Dave and Buster's, or, some other kind of, Chick-fil-A or something to that degree. How do you still make sure you can convey, what you're doing in that space? How can you connect that to engineering? So, we spend time doing workshops like that for the kids, and also looking over their resumes and making sure that their resumes are up to par. But the really big part is we're taking the time to interview them. So like, we know what opportunities that we have. I call myself, I'm not necessarily a gatekeeper for ExxonMobil, because I know there needs to be more employees that look like me in a corporation that large. So I don't consider myself a gatekeeper, but I consider myself a cheerleader. And so I need you to give me the right information so that I can go and make sure that I represent you, so that you too get that opportunity to create wealth, and to be able to use your skills in the proper way. And so my interviewing style is quite different from everyone else's. So a student comes in and I make it very much about a dialogue. But if there's an opportunity for me to give them some critical feedback in the moment, I'm going to say, listen, there was something that you have on your resume. This is something that's really important to us in industry. So the next time a person asks you this particular question, I need you to, connect the dots for them. And this is why this is important. And this is the value that it can add to my industry. And, most of the kids walk away so grateful, thinking like, why would she help me like that in an interview? And it's because I'm not a gatekeeper. I'm a cheerleader. I want more engineers that look like me to come and to be in organizations like, that I'm in currently. And so it's making sure that you're applying for internships, that you're getting your resume up to par. If you don't know how to do a resume, that you're asking for help. Career services is one of the departments, at a university that can support you in doing that. And if you have any professional individuals in your family, or a mentor of some kind, get your resume to them and ask like, hey, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? If you saw this, what would you think, about me? And spend time just really because you're the person that's worked on the things that you've worked on. You're basically the expert. So when you're going in and you're having an interview, you're the expert in the room on what you've done. And so you need to make sure that you're able to clearly communicate and articulate what was the value and the results that you delivered that allowed this thing to, to move forward, perpetually move forward, and ultimately allow that organization to achieve their business objectives and their goals.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And like I said, even if you're not interested in engineering, find a similar organization to get involved in, because
Yeah.
that's where you're going to get feedback. That's where you're going to network in the field. That's where you find your internships. And it's hard enough in a job market to sell yourself, but already
Right.
having those connections and having practice makes you that much more um, marketable as a candidate. And
I
I know we mentioned NSBE. Quick plug on that. That's the National Society of Black Engineers. They have huge presence on all of our HBCU campuses here in Mississippi, and our
Mhm.
PWI, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, also have NSBE chapters. So whether you go to PWI or HBCU,
Oh,
there
awesome.
there is NSBE there for you. Now, before I get to the students' questions, we got to talk about, you've made quite a career for yourself here. You've written a book.
Yeah.
You've been speaking. And you've really gained a platform to talk about talk about getting more women in engineering and just getting more qualified individuals in engineering. So talk about all that because that's really cool that you've been on national publications.
Yeah, yeah, so engineering, of course, is something that I love to do. But I also have, and I know I still have a higher calling, and that's where the leadership comes in. That's when it, really creating platforms for women to be more visible, to increase, their networks, their profitability, and ultimately be happier in industry. Statistics say that uh, 7 out of 10 women, by the time they reach 20 years in industry, like where I am, those women have already left the industry. So 7 out of 10
Wow.
have already left. And so that is something that, has lit a fire under me. Because ultimately what I know is there's quite a bit of funding and programming that gets female engineers into the pipeline. But ultimately, there's a success framework that was developed by men, um, and which makes it very challenging for women to move to the top. Often get into the top and they're frustrated, they're tired, they're drained because they're operating outside of how they've naturally or inherently been designed. And so, right now, that's one of the really big things that I'm focused on is creating a safe space for women. I just released and opened up a community called the Unforgettable Engineer. That's the brand that I function under. And it's all about, giving women the tools and strategies that they need to really attract the respect and the attention that they deserve in industry because we are doing some incredible things in engineering. I also have gotten opportunities to mentor and support over 19,000 women globally from India, from the US, Silicon Valley, from Canada, from, different parts of Africa, Dubai, so, in the Middle East as well, London, just really helping women to build confidence in their leadership skills, and make sure at the end of the day that they know that wherever they plant themselves, that's where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like anything else. Every field needs diversity, no matter what field it is, because a field should always represent the community it serves. So
Oh, yeah.
having multiple types of people, multiple types of backgrounds is so necessary for any business to be successful. And I know you've really led the charge on that in engineering, and I encourage it. You know, don't think because nobody in your family's gotten into engineering that you can't do it. I say often, just because you're the first at something doesn't mean you can't be the best at something. Because these jobs are only going to get more technologically advanced. They're going to become more in need. And like we said, they're ExxonMobil. The business of ExxonMobil, our livelihood depends on it. Our transportation. So many, you get to affect so many people and make such a positive impact on your community by getting into this great field.
Absolutely. And that's also one of the things that I share with the women is just really making sure that we remain current with what's going on with industry. So everybody knows right now that we're in a digital transformation era. So, AI and machine learning or, those are technologies, right now that's leading the charge and it's going to continue to lead in the future. And so whatever we need, whatever it is, just stay current with what's going on in industry and continue to grow your skill sets so that you're never irrelevant. You want to stay relevant at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, I got some questions from the students, and these are really good. This first one is Rondell Ellis. He's in ninth grade, and he
Okay.
asked, "What inspired you to choose engineering over and to get into engineering and change your mind from law?"
Yeah, and I mean it ultimately was that conversation. It was that one conversation, which is crazy. It was that one conversation for me. I think it helped me to belong, have a sense of belonging, have a sense that ultimately like there is someone else that's doing it that looks like me. So yeah, having that conversation with my guidance counselor and her sharing about her sister. I actually wrote about this. I was in a magazine, and we were talking about, the gateway for women getting into engineering. and Black women in particular getting into engineering. And I specifically, talked about, that one story, how that one thing just impact me the most. And so we should definitely look for those opportunities, those individuals who, we see doing the things that we want to do. And, if there's some way that you can connect with them and you can ask them questions, to really help you get a better understanding, then definitely do that. But it was that one conversation that did it for me.
That's awesome. This is Levon Johnson. He's also in ninth grade, and he asked, "What are some safety measures you take during an inspection?"
Oh, well, is it Leon? You said Leon?
Levon.
Levon. Oh, okay, awesome, Levon. So when you're doing a safety inspection, Levon, you want to, of course, make sure that you're certified to do the job. Right? You don't want to just, read a book and actually go out there and do some type of inspection. But, to do inspections within the oil and gas industry, you actually have to have a certification by the American Petroleum Institute called API. And depending on the type of equipment that you do, so if you're doing piping and you're going to do a piping inspection, then you need to have an API 570 certification. If you're going to do a pressure vessel, you need to have an API 510 certification. If you're going to do an
Wow.
inspection on a storage tank, you need to have an API 653 specifications. And so if you're not certified, then you're not qualified. It's not even safe for you to go out and to do that. The other part of it is working in within a refinery, within, where there's process units and there's all type of hazards. You have to have the proper, what we call protective clothing. We call it PPE. And so that would be your hard hat, that would be your safety glasses. You have to have on fire retardant clothing such that if it's a fire breaks out, you don't get burned. You have to have on, certified steel toe boots. You have to have earplugs. And in some cases, where you have pieces of equipment that are really, really noisy, you have to have a second pair of hearing protection, which would be like, the earmuffs. So that's just some of the things you do when you're preparing, to make sure you have a safe entry to go and do inspections. And then you need to be aware of what's going on in that unit. Like if they're actually doing some other type of work, like you need to be aware of those jobs. If they're doing a critical lift, like they have a really large piece of equipment that they're lifting by a crane overhead, you need to be aware of those things so that you make sure that you yourself are in the safe environment. And then you have the work permit to actually go and do the work, where those that are close to the work in operations have signed off on it and giving you permission to go into the area and do work. And so that's some of the things that you prepare on a safety standpoint, just to go and do inspections.
Absolutely. I like this one. This is Derek Hutchins. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What are some things you're looking for when you're recruiting for Exxon?"
Yeah, so typically we typically recruit for sophomores through seniors. There is a separate program that we do have called Future Leaders Academy, and that's specifically we start at freshman level for those, but we're trying to identify those students who have high potential to really do well within Exxon. So in addition to making sure that you're completing your coursework, you have to have a certain level GPA. For Exxon, that GPA is a 3.5 or above out
Oh,
of a 4.0 scale. Yeah, it's extremely competitive. Um, and we see a lot of great students that may have a 3.2, but because our minimum is a 3.5, we can just kind of give them advice on how to continue to improve, and what are the things that you can do to get your GPA up. So we're looking for students with a certain GPA, who is of course interested in the opportunities that we have, as well as, they have strong leadership skills. So we don't want to see that you just go to class and go back home, right? We want to see that you're involved. You know what's going on, around the campus. You're involved in a NSBE, or you're involved in a Society of Women Engineers, or American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or you're involved in some other club that's, that's on campus, that you are, student government or whatever it may be, that you're also involved, because and athletics as well, because we want to see that you can juggle, right? You don't have to just focus on, the coursework, but you can actually juggle and be a well-rounded person. And of course, we're looking for those leadership skills. How effectively do you communicate? Are you a critical thinker? Critical thinking is, man, we do a lot of critical thinking in our jobs, right? Are you able to come up with solutions? Or is everything a barrier and you just kind of, shut down? So we're looking for the GPA. We're looking for your interest in the career opportunities that we have. We're looking for your extracurricular. And then we're also looking, at the end of the day, what was the last one? Oh my goodness, I just forgot it just that quick. Um, all of those things that I said before, that's what we're looking for. Oh, the leadership skills. We're looking for that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're saying that, because we say it till we're blue in the face about, no matter where you choose to go to college, whether it be small, big, PWI, HBCU, community college,
Yeah.
what have you, find a way to get involved. These
Yeah.
companies are looking for people that are involved on college campuses. All right, I got one more. This is Michael Sherrill. He's in 10th grade, one of our football players here at Velma Jackson High School.
Okay.
He asked, "What is the best rewarding part of your job?"
Ooh. Hmm. The best rewarding part. So I'm not the typical engineer. So Greg, I get a lot when I show up in spaces. People say, "Oh, you're an engineer," and I'm thinking like, why do they say that? They said because you're like so down to earth, like you have personality, you talk to people. So I think what's really rewarding for me when it comes to my career is that opportunity to build those networks, to communicate and, to integrate with others, that whole collaboration. I'm a woman through and through. I love the collaboration, that sense of, community. I think for me, that's what's really rewarding, having that ability for different minds to come together and to collaborate on a challenge, and ultimately we come out with a solution that supports everyone. So that's one of the most rewarding things about my career.
That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But before we go, a couple things. Your website, erykatjohnson.com, great content on there. A lot of things that you speak on, some of your publications. I encourage everybody to get on there, follow all your social medias. But that's Eryka with a Y,
Mhm.
tjohnson.com. But before we go, no matter, any of these kids, no matter who they are, why should they really consider getting into this field? Because it really needs good young minds.
Yeah, particularly mechanical engineering, it's one of the fields, I kid you not, that's probably the broadest of all of the engineering disciplines. And so when you think about a mechanical engineer, we're people that, we design, we're gonna manufacture, we're gonna repair, we're gonna test, and it's all around mechanical systems and mechanical devices. And we have the ability to work, although I'm in the energy sector, oil and gas sector, like you can go and do robotics. You can go into the automotive, you can go into even the biomedical side of it. You can deal with pumps and machinery, like even construction. You can go and work for one of the governmental defense offices. Like there's so many career paths within mechanical engineering. And ultimately, if you want to be technical, you can. But if you want to go more so on the leadership side and really support a lot of these technical teams and really make and develop strategies and things of that nature, you have that ability as well. And so mechanical engineering is definitely for you if you are interested in how things work, but also designing, being able to think through things, and come up with creative ideas, and you want to apply it to various roles or industries within the world. Because even with where I am in the energy sector, like we power the things that we do, we make sure that individuals have power and energy throughout the globe. So that's what I would say.
It's awesome. Well, again, we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. Just such great work you're doing down there. One of the many Houston guests that have joined us over the last few years. So really great place for engineering careers. And we appreciate, again, you taking some time for us. Eryka Johnson, all the way from Houston, Texas. Thank you again for taking time for us today.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.